I recognize the author of the bill, Representative Zalesnikar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. We've had a lot of discussion, and I appreciate hearing the statements and the comments and the experiences from both sides of the aisle. At the end of the day, I think it's important for members to remember that for 17 years, before I came here, and maybe before some of you came here, but we do have members that were here on both sides of the aisle when this was a bipartisan discussion. Unfortunately, it changed 2 years ago. Minnesotans didn't change, this body changed. And I think it's important that we return to that same spirit of bipartisanship, because that's really what Minnesotans want. The bill gives women options, and it's really simple. But right now, I want to talk about some things that were said. Unregulated. Unregulated was said. The reality is, Democrats rejected regulations for settings like Planned Parenthood who do invasive medical procedures. They didn't want licensing in those settings. When we offered that, you said no. Positive alternative grants through places like a pregnancy resource center and a maternity home are not doing invasive medical procedures. The second thing is, I heard people say, we're not licensed. That's true in the sense that the buildings aren't licensed on either side, for either side of the grants that we fund. It's true at Planned Parenthood and it's true at the resource centers, but what they didn't tell you is that every single professional licensed person is licensed. The RN, the doctor, the medical director. I have been to these settings and they have that. They are as equally licensed as the ones that are in Planned Parenthood. Second, maternity homes I heard were never funded. That's like a new thing in this bill. Well, that's not true either. Members, we funded through this body maternity homes. The Philomena home in this city of St. Paul lost $149,790 because the grant is a multiple year grant, 4-year grant, I believe. It ended. Real loss to real women. North Maternity in Duluth lost $72,023 of their grant in a maternity home. In Hibbing, in northern Minnesota, they lost $148,046. That's just facts. We funded them before. So I heard about, let's not deceive people, then let's tell them the truth. This is not a new thing. It was going on for 17 years from this chamber. Number 3, let's talk about monitoring. I heard people say of their experiences, but in 2005, when this program started, there was a lot of due diligence done. Because you know what? They put third-party compliance for pregnancy resource centers where they were audited by foundations like the Wilder Foundation. People that were pro-choice audited these places and said they were super impressed. Are the same auditings happening at Planned Parenthood? Auditing has happened from 2005 to 2017, or 2023, for 17 years. So when you ask yourself if your experience, I'm sorry if you had an experience that was different, but I'm talking about from 2005 when we had grants that have compliance with the Minnesota Department of Health reviewing to 2023. Number 4, records. I heard that there's no confidentiality. That's just not true either. That's in the bill. If you read the bill, you saw it. We talked about that at committee, of confidentiality and records. We don't want records to not have that, and we don't want breach of records for any organization that we're giving money. We talked about settings. The settings seem different. I think you're going to find scrubs. I think you're going to find paperwork. I think you're going to find magazines and seating, whether you go to Planned Parenthood or you go to a pregnancy resource center. And when the doctors are there, you're likely going to see a stethoscope. That's just absolutely insanely ridiculous to make statements like that. Grant applications, number 7 that I'm going to talk about. They have grant applications right in the contract for these that talk about the conditions and the terms. That was from 2005 to 2023. There was actual wording in there for everybody to have clear guidelines so that some of the things you were talking about would not happen. And I'm not aware of any that have happened in that time frame. We're talked about pregnancy resource centers not needing the money. Okay, well, we had 77 pregnancy resource centers in 2023. We have 73 now. 77 to 73, so 4 have clearly closed. And you're right. People will give money, whether they're giving money to the sexual and reproductive health grants. We just heard 990s. Billions are in that organization. And so, yes, people will give to make sure that women have options. But let's be truthful on both sides of it. Because the funding exists in the sexual and reproductive health grants for $25 million from the state of Minnesota. It exists. This bill for positive alternative grants has never taken away money for abortions, to get birth control, to get the services that are done there. What it took away is car seats, clothing, diapers, supplies. I've been to them. There's just rooms full of it. That's what it took away. It took away ultrasounds, not an invasive procedure. That's what it took away from women in Minnesota. It's unfortunate that was a simple bipartisan decision for 17 years has become political, because Minnesotans, 80% of them agree with exactly what I wrote in this bill. Just let us make the decision. The reality is women do not need government to arbitrarily limit choice and options for women. So this isn't about abortion. Abortion's fully funded, same as it's been. So tell the truth and be honest to Minnesotans. What's not funded is the alternative options for women. That's the truth. And yeah, there's been some egregious misallocation of funds, but not in the category of pregnancy resource centers and maternity homes. I haven't heard one claim of that in the state of Minnesota. But I've heard about $600 million of misallocated funds and fraud. But it hasn't been here. And we have a fraud committee in the state of Minnesota now, as of 2025, that would be hearing that, should that ever be a reality. But the fact is, the system had controls to have audits for compliance. Members, there was safeguards for 17 years. There was common sense for 17 years. It is that simple. It is simply giving women options. Women are not naive. Every one of us have this phone to find out what's in a 20-second radius, a 20-mile radius, to pick. I don't need the government to tell me, and I don't think anybody else does either. Nobody's forcing. The contracts are pretty clear. I've read them. It's a supportive service on both sides of the aisle. And nothing changes with this bill, members. What this bill does is give women options. Members, let's restore what happened for 17 years. That's what Minnesota expects us to do. This is about as bipartisan as it gets. It's not taking away from anything, it's adding. Members, vote yes.
The clerk will take the roll.